Hey, welcome to a episode of our Inverse Funding Meet the Founder series. And today we're with Julian from Vaultric. I'm Jamie
Hello.
Harford. Hey, Julian. I'm Jamie Harford. I'm the CEO of Inverse Funding. And basically, the idea of today's show is to sort of lift the hood of what's behind the business, get to know Julian a little bit better. I work in fundraising. I've worked on across 100 plus fundraising rounds, including crowdfunding and angel investments. So the conversation will go there. But I think the first question, Julian, is I've had a look at your background, and obviously we've worked together a little bit now. And you've came from various different roles. Some have been really customer service focused, others quite different. So can you share a bit about your background and sort of why you started the company?
Yeah, so I guess prior to being in the commercial environment, I actually used to be within the music industry.
Mm.
Years and years ago, when I finished my undergrad, I used to write and produce music within the sector. I am somewhat glad to say nothing that I worked on is publicly available, which is good. Um, but although not to say that I was bad, it's just the artists I was working with were dynamic. Anyway, off the back of that, I went to work for Nationwide, where I used to work on their within the customer and ops team. I used to work on the recommend a friend scheme, where you recommend a friend, one person gets £100, the other person gets the £100. So within working within customer service, I was actually responsible for the monthly reports as to why people weren't getting the £100 and doing quite a bit of root cause analysis as to what we could do to improve that. Fast forward a few more years, I went to do my master's, and then I started working within the automotive aftermarket sector. And just think it's a massive sector worth billions, and it's the industry where you take your car in to get fixed rather than necessarily fitting the same device that was fitted upon production. It's an alternative that might be cheaper. So in the name aftermarket. So I used to work in that industry, and I worked in it for a very short time when I did a massive U switch or U turn, sorry, into education supplies. Now, within these two roles, I was still working within product management. So I began as a junior product manager at the job within the automotive aftermarket sector, and then I went on to be a product marketing manager at the education supplies role shortly after. In terms of, I guess, how what's led me here. Funny enough, they have very little to do with my experience, and like many founders in our space, it's a lot to do with solving a problem. I've told the story several times where I spent an entire day with my auntie going through different dealerships, trying to find the best vehicle for her and the best deal as well. And logistically, it was a lot. I live in Swindon, and we were traveling between Bristol and Swindon, trying to find the best dealer who had what options, all that kind of jazz. To cut a long story short, it wasn't until we went to Peugeot that had a just add fuel scheme, which I thought was impressive and seemed hassle free, but logistically, it still had a lot of work for Peugeot. So I thought, could we fix this in another sense? You throw in EV to the mix, it got slightly complicated because at the time, insurance companies didn't quite understand EVs. It's got a lot better, to be fair. But yeah, ultimately, I felt that look, if I'm gonna have a more flexible future around my car and what I drive, there needed to be a better solution. And at the time, there were very few options available in the market. Hence why I started Voltric.
Yeah, fair. It makes sense. I mean, as you say, normally you meet someone who's had like something happen to them or they've been watching an industry for ages. Does your problem, your problem statement, does that come specifically from, the user? So, for example, as you said, your auntie, or have you got experience, as you said, working in the automotive industry that you see problems on both sides? Where does that
So
fit?
I have contacts in the industry where on some level I actually do see both sides, but I'm
Okay.
more of a consumer, more of a consumer, right? Even when I was working in the job within the education supplies, I used to travel an hour. I actually bought a car on hire purchase. I used to travel an hour from Swindon to Trowbridge, where I used to go work. Now I bought the car on hire purchase on a 5-year deal, only to be made redundant a year into the job, right? So I still had 4 years of negative equity with this vehicle, which a vehicle that supposedly I didn't need anymore. And that's where like this solution comes in. It's like how can we have a model that offers flexibility, um, without, tying people into huge liabilities. And also, you got to think many people would have got deals done for their cars just before COVID, only for the car to have been sat there for probably 3, 4, 5 months, some cases even 9 months, because people then changed jobs and became more remote. I've met quite a few people actually that have told me that they used to drive shed loads of miles, and now, that they're lucky to be doing 7 to 8 thousand miles a year now, compared to their 20, 30, 40,000 that they used to be
Yeah,
doing. So
yeah,
that's where I guess we've seen the world change, and people are now really thinking about simplistic options.
and
Granted, they could be more expensive, but they're in the long run cheaper and more flexible than other options in the market.
is there a reason why you went full EV over petrol cars?
Yeah, so several factors. In I'd say at least when we started, at least 4 years ago, EVs were still new, and there was a lot of education around the opportunity with electric vehicles. Um, And as a result, there was a lot of the demand as well. There was a lot more government support at the time, which I'm very critical of because there's next to none now. So if anyone in the government is watching, pay attention, please. Um, but yeah, there was a lot more government support. There was a lot more demand, and also when you think about where the direction of travel is, mind the pun, this local councils are building in a lot of clean air zones. So Bristol, Bath have got a clean air policy. Birmingham got a clean air policy. Coventry's working on something similar, or have something similar in place. London has
Newcastle's got
got
one in the city
Newcastle's
centre.
got one
Yeah,
exactly. London's got ULEZ, which obviously for those in London have had an impact. So when you look at actually what's driving demand, this is before thinking electric vehicles, and just think of the opportunity, right? We know that's driving a far more demand at the moment, and as a result, when it comes to building our business and looking at scalability, that's what we had to look at. That's what I had to look at, right? And that's why we chose electric vehicles. So that's number one. Number two is sustainability is still quite a strong part in what we're trying to do. You know, I know people have opinions as to whether EVs are sustainable and all the kind of solutions are
yeah,
out there. And I can argue that till the car comes home. But in terms of tailpipe emissions, let's focus on that for a minute. The gases that are being pumped out, EVs are far better, hence why policies come in place, than petrol or diesel, right? Because they are not pumping out any CO2. And that is a very significant element to remember. And as a result, this can also help companies with their own green credentials when it comes to what they're putting in place for the future as well. So, yeah, EVs for us made sense. And the final bit is technology. With a lot of the EVs coming out, one of the things I have not spoken about in this chat already is we are building technology to make the driver's experience better. And with a lot of EVs coming out into the market today, they are far more advanced, and it means that we can build tech that can integrate with those cars and add value to drivers than we could have easily done for petrol and diesel cars at the time. To be fair, a lot more petrol and diesel cars have got better and are catching up to the advancement of EVs. But it just once again made more sense. We can build those innovative solutions fairly easily because of the various APIs that are being made available to the cars. Tesla, Polestar, Hyundai, just to name a few, really, who are really doing some amazing work in that area around integration.
yeah. I mean, Tesla got an unfair head start, I guess. But
Unfair. Oof. I don't know if it's unfair. No one wanted to do anything with them, so
no,
they had to build it themselves, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I hear
I
you.
mean, the car. I live on a tourist island, so I live in Mallorca in Spain, and
Mm,
I think there is they've obviously all got targets they're trying to hit in terms of, renting EVs. So I'm seeing a lot more EVs
mm,
on the roads. And I must say, as I said, we've gone from Tesla, who had a really big head start. The rest of the EVs, they look great now. I mean, the Mercedes EVs look fantastic. The little Fiat 500
yeah.
is a beautiful little car. So I think that for the consumer, it's a great time. You obviously, like you say, you've come out of a couple of different spaces, whether it be music, whether it be customer experience, and all of everything else. And you've come into business now. Have you got business mentors? Have you got people who sort of have been shaping you and so forth? Or are you going
Yeah.
alone?
Lone Ranger. No, definitely not going alone. And once again, there are several factors to that. So, on top of having a co-founder who's already done two other startups prior to Voltric, um, you know, one of the colleagues within our senior team has worked within the tech space, both clean tech and I guess advanced consumer tech. And then outside of that, we actually do have advisors as well, advisors who I can call upon who have got experience in this space to be able to advise and guide. And I actually take them up uh, quite regularly, actually. One of them in particular, where we need to make a business decision, and I can just simply just give them a call and just be like, look, what do you think about this? What's your opinion? And the good thing about these advisors is they tell you what they think, but it's still down to you to make a decision as to whether you take the advice or not. And that for me is very helpful, right? They paint a perspective that I might have not thought about. And in most cases, I do take their advice, but in some cases, I go, okay, I now understand the impact of not taking this. However, this is why I'm going to go down this direction. But at least I'm aware of, you know, what would happen if I didn't go down the direction. And that's the most important thing about having advisors, people who can just paint the alternative picture for you if needed.
Sure. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's great to have different perspectives, and I guess that's the luxury I have. I speak to entrepreneurs like yourself all day, not
Mm,
necessarily advisors, so I get to sort of have, conversations about different businesses, different styles. So I get to see a lot.
mm.
Um, we've spoken about obviously the EV market, and you've got passions there. We've spoken about, your problem that you're trying to solve. Um, it would be good to get actually an overview of Voltric and the products and services that you sell.
Yeah, definitely. So, we offer at Voltric we offer electric cars on a subscription basis where users can pay one price amount to access an EV of their choice, and it's not just the car; it's insurance, breakdown, maintenance, all bundled into one service where the user hasn't got to manage any of that. All they do is pay Voltric one price a month to access their EV, and we manage everything else during the relationship. Furthermore, we're actually building technology to enhance the driving experience. So improving people's ability to park even more seamlessly, access charging even more seamlessly through one touch point, and also provide data on the entire driving experience, whether it's for charging or it's how they're braking, speeding, turning, trips, all that kind of stuff. It's all about adding value to the driving experience. So we provide a service and we are building technology at the same time.
Yeah, it's awesome. I would, I've already said I'd get one if I was in the UK. I look forward
Don't
to the day
worry,
you
we
can
can
get
we can make
outside.
things happen. I've told you,
Yeah,
Jamie, we can make things happen.
very good. Um, so I think, from our conversations as well, I know that you're not just sitting around with nothing happening. This is busy, and it's getting busier. Do you want to talk a little bit about, your traction and growth?
Yeah, so we've had immense traction. November we were doing approximately 6,000 kmrr. We've grown significantly from what was 10 vehicles to 40 plus vehicles doing approximately 20k MRR at the moment. I think we just had another top month in doing 27k in revenue. And when we're growing and scaling, I'm not going to pretend it's easy. And I think, as you said, it's a busy day, the office all day, every moment, every second. But the downturn from last quarter meant that we had to think very strongly about how we would still operate our business and how we would be able to grow and scale. So we did, in terms of our business model, we did adjust it slightly to be able to allow us to execute, and that's working to our favor at the moment. We've still got legacy issues that we're trying to fix off the back of that, but it does mean that, like I said, we are now growing, we are now building solutions. We are meeting the onboarding of our customers and their expectations where possible. And we are doing our seed round, preparing for our seed round, where essentially we'll be able to take on more resources and actually deliver to customers. I should also add, we work with a partner to offer our service on a salary sacrifice scheme. And as a result, we've actually been able to onboard approximately 30 companies who will be able to support, well, their own employees in accessing an EV and benefiting from the tax incentives that come with that as well. So that is obviously a channel that we're very proud of, and we're looking forward to launching it officially on our end.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of my friends got the list of company cars he could get from his work, and he said they all started at about 700 quid a month. So a bit out of his bracket for what he was looking
Mm.
for. None were electric, so it was just like as well, it was just a challenge. So I think you've got a lot
Yeah,
of fresh ground in that space for sure.
Well, definitely, and I think especially with on two fronts with EVs, EVs have pay only 2% in benefit in kind, whereas the average petrol diesel is 17-18% from when I last checked. And on top of that, when you talk about a bundled up service, a subscription, so you're able to save on all the solutions that are bundled up. That is the maintenance breakdown, insurance, and actually, once again, it's just an extra added value as a consumer where you're paying gross your salary as well. So there are just many benefits that salary sacrifice offers that I guess directs, doesn't necessarily offer. And it means companies, from our perspective, we're able to share environmental impact and CO2 savings by driving an EV to the employee, but also to the company. And then the company can use that data once again as part of their own green credentials in terms of the impact, the employees are also having on the environment. So from a
That's cool.
solution or from a service point of view, it's fairly strong, but from a credibility point of view with companies, it's also strong as well.
So if there was a so say there's someone who's listening who has that same scenario, they've got a workplace and they don't fancy any of the cars, and if they were to go to their employer with a Voltric car, you could work with the employer to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a partner who does all the admin for the schemes to make sure that they're in place, and of course they're fit for the company. And yeah, that means that, yeah, people can come to us or to our partner, and essentially we can onboard the company and then subsequently provide our service to their employees as well. We've actually onboarded a really exciting major partner, and I'm not allowed to say yet, and I need to know when I can say these things. I need to actually know because I plan to
Caution,
make
caution,
noise.
caution.
Well, when we had our legal representative with us up until recently, she would be sat opposite me in court like this, and like giving me nods when I'm going too far past the line. You can't say that. You can't say that. So yeah, but at the moment I don't have that protection, so I need to get that back in place. But yeah, I think for now I'm not allowed to say, but I will. I think I can share with investors, but publicly we will be doing an announcement with
Yeah.
some of the partners that we're bringing on board. So.
That's super cool. I normally would ask here about unique selling points and advantages. So, but I think to be honest with you, to articulate it in I think what you're saying is that the bundled service is a massive advantage.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
massively. I think that, for anyone looking at what life looks like over the next couple of years, and I'm not saying that we will have another lockdown like we ever did, but nor am I saying that prices won't go up like they did last year. What I'm saying is that we now have the opportunity and flexibility to think about how we spend going forward and what that means. We can pay you, Jamie, can go pay for an EV of your choice, 5 grand deposit, and then pay something like £300 a month, and then throw in insurance, breakdown maintenance for the next 5 years on a single vehicle. Or you could pay the bundled fee where you don't put a deposit down and drive that vehicle for the next 12 months and have another vehicle in the following 12 months, which means that your driving experience is always up to date, right? Like there are pros for that. It has its pros and it has its cons, and same would a finance deal would. It's all about now you have options that can hopefully attain to how you live your life going forward. That is the point.
Yeah, I think that this whole concept of ownership is being unpicked, especially in automotive. For whatever reason, it's kind of like the last industry that's holding on. And don't forget, I was a VC funded
Mm,
automotive founder, so I've got a lot of experience in this space. And people want to own their house and own their car. And the owning the car bit's weird because most people, I mean, if you surveyed the average person on the street who had, PCP
mm.
finance or, the traditional routes, I can guarantee 90% plus would likely be in negative equity anyway. So
Yeah,
they are.
yeah. A huge proportion of drivers do have a finance package because the reality is it allows you to access vehicles that you wouldn't have the capital to easily access, right? And once again, our service, despite some opinions, I don't think our service will ever ruin or destroy the PCP or HP solutions. It's just another alternative. That's the most important thing. It offers ultimate flexibility with a slightly higher capital per month, but once again, it's you got to think. I give this example, or my team and I give this example. If you take a Tesla Model Y, 50 grand, 50-ish vehicle for all intensive purposes, you can essentially pay what will be 10 grand a year for that one vehicle for the next 5 years, or you could pay essentially a bundled up 12 grand uh, for the first year and then get another vehicle for another year. And then within 5 years, you'd have still spent probably 50, 60, 50 to 55K within 5 years, but you would have driven five different vehicles, had ultimate flexibility, ultimate what's it called? Bundled up service without the hassles of managing it, versus the other person that just paid 50 grand or paid a 5 year HP and they've had to manage everything else in between, right? It's just, once again, it's about what fits for your life. And these are the things you got to
Yeah.
think about. I mean, if I had the cash, I would buy a Model X and put it into my living room, right? Just to look at. That would
Yeah.
be on a subscription. It's because I freaking love a Model X. So it's about what makes sense for you and your life.
It's true. I'm like, say if you're digital, you're digital. I'm still analog in my automotive, experience. I've got a car outside that I own, and I was in the
Yeah.
supermarket car park, and this girl with learner plates on just drove into the side of me, not fast enough to hurt anything or anyone.
Mm.
Well, no, it did definitely hurt things. It spun the car around. But it was in a position now where it's like, okay, I've now smashed up my side. It's like gonna quote through the claim through the insurance. That's just a pain. It's
Yeah.
difficult. I've then got to take the car off the road to get fixed. I'm now really worried about the depreciation because I've had, the door cards off. And,
Yeah.
I just don't see how this old model of automotive ownership is going to fit, Gen Z's, millennials. It works for a certain generation, but,
Mm.
I think that you're on the right path for sure.
No, definitely. And even at Valtric, we're looking at the price points for our vehicles and going, what can we do to make it even more affordable for the generation we know are far more interested in this model than the older generation who we have majority of, right? Who have that far more disposable income. So yeah, it's a learning point, but we're determined to tackle and conquer the market.
How long do you think? I mean, in your own head, how long have you got on this journey? Is it 5 years? Do you think it's 10 years? How long do you think this is going to take you to get it to, AA, kazoo, or whatever they're called, Volt Trick, that sort of like
Yeah,
level?
yeah. So, I mean, it's driven by capital. I mean, if you mentioned Kazoo there, Kazoo dominated the used car space within 18 months, and capital is what did that, right? But in terms of the steady growth that we have, we do think that within the next 3 to 5 years, we should be one of the stronger players within the space based on the partners that we're building, based on our ability to obviously close more funding and grow and scale. And more importantly as well, it's one thing I've not said in the entire conversation for us, it's actually not just about cars or car subscription. It's about the entire mobility landscape. What can we do to get you, Jamie, from A to B in the most sort of efficient, practical, and sustainable way? So, what saying here is that we will be looking at other mode of transport and how we can add that to our service to make, that mobility journey just far more seamless.
I think that mobility, especially when you talk of it like that, when we look at the future of cities, for example, most cities you're not going to be able to drive through. So perhaps you need to
Exactly.
pull to the out of town. You need to get in the boot and pop out your electric boy and get in the middle. And I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
I think you're right. I
Well,
think
but that's exactly it. And the reality is the way people work from home far more now than they've ever done. And when people go into cities, it tends to be more for leisure than anything else these days. It's like, well, what options are more suited to that, right? So speaking boldly, these are things we're thinking about long term. For now, we are trying to just support people into getting into cars more easily, be more sustainable, and support that transition. But as we grow and scale, we'll be thinking about the wider impact and how we can, be more supportive on the mobility landscape as a whole.
yeah, for sure. As you know, I'm funding guy, funding enthusiast. For my sins, I guess.
Mm.
How's it been? Since you started the business with fundraising.
I mean, I'll be transparent. Fundraising has been tough, on several fronts. And um, how do I put this? It's not easy for that. There is data to show that it's generally not easy for a black founder to be raising the amount of capital that we've seen other founders do. At the same
The
time,
data is less than 2% of all funding goes to black founders in the UK.
exactly, right? However, from I say that because actually I didn't know about that data too much later, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I've had to learn is the language that is and the strategies that is used within the sector.
Yeah.
Regardless of the data, I've had to learn how to execute an approach. And I think for me, sometimes I knock myself down because I didn't know these things. I didn't know. I remember when someone asked me what an MRR was, I'm like, what? Um, and I had to go back, even though we're in subscription, I had to go back and think, okay, right, so it's the recurrent revenue from onboarding the new sales, right? Okay, I get that. And then it changed to AR, and I'm like, son of a gun, like why are you changing? And then I remember hearing about cap table. I'm like, you mean that list with the shareholders, right? Okay, so it's like things like that, and then your deck, the format you have it in. So yeah, I will be honest to say a lot of that took me time because I just wasn't. This is my first startup. I wasn't clued up. So funding has been tough, but I'm glad to say up until date we've done circa 430K, and that's in the last 4 years. For us to grow and scale, it needs to be significantly higher. Hence, why we're doing our seed round, where we're raising 3 million for that seed round. And what we're doing prior to that is taking some convertible loan notes to extend runway and actually kind of get some really good high value angel investors involved as well. And we've been beneficial of having some really supportive angels from our pre-seed, which we did 281 of. And we've taken some convertibles now, we're taking some more just to extend the runway. But fundraising has been tough. I think I have got better as a founder, as a leader. My knowledge has improved significantly. And to put it simply, if I was to start a whole other startup, my execution would be far different to what it's been with Voluntary.
Yeah.
Just because I just know so much more about the landscape and how to get things done. So yeah, but I'm also somewhat confident and praying that once we close that seed round, I can take the company to the next point, which is obviously Series A and beyond, basically.
I mean, look, even the best entrepreneurs in the UK, if we look at a tier system and you've got tier one entrepreneurs, even they would be, over the moon with 400K plus, bearing in mind, since you started the business, we've had the pandemic twice. We've had the Russia invasion of Ukraine. We've had the banking crisis. We've had tech layoffs. The tech layoffs was crazy. We've now got generative AI. It's making everyone spin around in a circle and go, oh, am I missing something here? Is this the wrong bet? 'Cause it's going to get wiped out by AI. And I would say I think you're fairly AI proof.
Let me throw in there as well, supply chain issues.
Yeah, yeah.
That messed us up like no one's
Was
business.
that the silicon shortage in EVs and everything slowed?
Yeah. So that the chips basically, and I mean, there are cars that we ordered in January last year, and I believe they're only just starting to arrive, and so you're looking at a good, what, 18 months from the order placed. Bear in mind, there was a point where cars were available. At one point, the cars were available within a 2 week notice, then it was a 3 month notice, and then it's just gone on. So we've unfortunately been through that storm, and it's one of the reasons why I tell sort of investors that we're experiencing going through storms, and we're experiencing navigating through them. It's why I think we will win, right? Because the experience that we've had in terms of learning to navigate, adjust, was something that unfortunately we weren't taught, but we had to do to survive. And as a result, we've been able to build that as a level of resilience in what we do as well. But yeah, unfortunately, if you throw everything you've said in addition to what I just throw in, yeah, my life has been one heck of a storm.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, look, I think that's brilliant, and I encourage anybody who's watching to get in touch with Julian and reach out and have a chat, whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, an advisor, or even just an EV enthusiast who wants to see what he's building. Thanks for a great chat, Julian. It's much
Thank you very
appreciated.
much. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to the influx of queries that come through.